Breathe is directed by Fede Alvarez, written by him and Rodo Sayagues, and stars Jane Levy, Dylan Minnette, Daniel Zavato, and Stephen Lang. And Don't Breathe is about three small-time robbers who break into the house of a blind army veteran played by Stephen Lang, only to end up trapped in the house with the blind man trying to kill them. Now, I was really excited to check out Don't Breathe because there was a lot of buzz surrounding this movie even before it came out, and I am a fan of Fede Alvarez's 2013 remake of Evil Dead. Of course, nothing's gonna touch the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, but that remake was a lot better than it had any right to be. As for Don't Breathe, what I will say is that the writing does leave something to be desired, but it is a very well-directed movie that's also unbelievably tense. Now, part of me was expecting the same kind of over-the-top gore that was in Evil Dead, but I was really pleasantly surprised to see that this is actually a really restrained movie. It's more about the suspense than the actual scares, and there really isn't that much blood and gore in it. And in this movie, Alvarez really proves his skill as a director because of just how he uses every single detail in this environment to really maximize all the scares. And of course, the main attraction in this movie is the tension. Once the tension gets started, once these characters end up inside the house, it literally never lets up. Like, it continues on from scene to scene. Even as the situations vary, you still feel that same kind of edge of your seat white knuckle atmosphere. And what I really like is that Fede Alvarez's direction here he's not a one-trick pony, you know. He really does lots of different things with this setting and with these characters to make the situation scarier, but you know, it never feels like different scenes are coming from different movies. And just like the title promises, you will end up holding your own breath throughout this movie. I held my breath like half the time here because he really kind of makes you feel like you're there with them. And of course, any of his direction wouldn't have worked without his editors, Eric L. Bison, Luis Ford, and Gardner Gold, and these editors really keep the pace very brisk. This movie is just under 90 minutes, I believe, and that's a perfect length for this kind of thriller, this kind of story. And they do what lots of great thriller editors do, which is that they play around with the sequencing of shots to really maximize the suspense and to misdirect the audience, because there are certain moments where you don't know exactly what happens in a scene and you don't know like how close some people are to other people. The visuals in Don't Breathe do add the suspense as well. Almost the entire movie takes place in darkness, at night. But Pedro Luca's cinematography, his lighting, never really makes things difficult to see. You can see everything, but it's just made scarier by the cover of darkness. And much like in The Conjuring 2, the camera here floats around and through walls and really makes things feel labyrinthine. But my favorite visual moment in Don't Breathe has to be in that one scene that you see in the trailer where it takes place in pitch blackness. And I really think that they filmed it in pitch blackness because you can see the actors' eyes are like really dilated, so like that just made it a lot freakier. There's good music here as well from Roque Baños, but the sound design is the real star here. Most of this movie is wisely kept very quiet, and this really works because every little sound that you hear really puts you on edge, and every loud sound you hear is really, really shocking. And with regard to the actors here, Jane Levy continues to prove herself as a really great horror actress. This is a very physical role once again, just like in Evil Dead, but despite it being a primarily physical performance, she has this believable sense of dread on her face the entire time, and she's not just like a typical horror scream queen or whatever. She is legitimately a good actress. Dylan Minnette is also really good. It's nice to see him in like an R-rated thing after Goosebumps, and he has the most emotionally going on because he's like the reluctant one going in to rob this guy, and he really sells it, you know, and in some weird way he is sort of like the heart and soul of the movie. But Stephen Lang in this movie as the blind man is 100% believable. He is so great. He has this huge like physical presence about him that makes him super intimidating, but he still pulls off the nuances of blindness. You know, how he kind of looks around without really making eye contact, and how like he's able to communicate like sort of the tragedy of his character as well. And after watching Don't Breathe, I felt like I was sensing a trend, you know, between this and Green Room and Lights Out. Like, all these movies have very simple plots, and you know, they wisely don't try to pile on too many plot details and stuff, and that's a good thing. And the characters as well are as resourceful and intelligent as they can be given the situation. And I really hope that becomes the norm in the future because it just makes for better horror. With all that said, I have to admit that I wasn't as crazy about Don't Breathe as a lot of other people are. I do have issues with the movie. There are small things like, this movie starts with a flashback that I thought was kind of unnecessary, and I hope that doesn't become the norm. Early on as well, there's like a couple of jump scares that kind of come out of nowhere and don't really make a lot of sense and don't add to the story. I hope that also doesn't become the norm. But my big issue with Don't Breathe is the fact that they kind of try to develop their characters, but they kind of end up airballing it as well. Because in my opinion, if you're going to try to develop your characters into sympathetic people, you should do it well, because otherwise just don't do it at all. And here, the main emotional thing is that Jane Levy's character has this kind of broken family at home, and she wants to rescue like her baby sister and go somewhere else. And these things are only really explored at the beginning and the end of the movie. There's no development in the middle, so it just kind of feels a bit obligatory. So I personally didn't really care as much as I wanted to about some of these characters. And about 3/4 into the way of the movie, there's something really dark and twisted that happens that I know a lot of people will enjoy. I kind of enjoyed it, but I wanted it to be less abrupt, because when it happens, it just kind of shifts all the morality of the film, because prior to this moment happening, you're kind of on the fence about who's a good guy, who's a bad guy, because the protagonists are robbers. But then when this moment happens, it kind of turns some people into clear-cut good guys, some people into clear-cut bad guys. But I'm still gonna say that Don't Breathe is a really good movie. It knows what it is mostly. It's a really good genre exercise, and it's a lot of fun to watch with friends. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Don't Breathe. If you guys have seen it, tell me what you thought about it, and whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.